Gonna do it over the culvert that's collapsing with the dam that's given out. And it's a major street. That street's used for
All right.
trucks from Havel all the way down.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you to the Tuesday, November 19th, 2024 Planning Board meeting, Town Hall, 7 PM. Entertain a motion to open.
So motioned.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. All right. We'll jump into the agenda here. 38 Benjamin Street Extension. Accept the as-built plans, release the bond, and close out 53G account for 38 Benjamin Street Extension. What is the wish of the board? Any comments, questions, concerns?
Mr. Chair, so I will note that we do have in the packet a memo from TEC in regards to the last review of the plan sets that were submitted. There are a couple of things that were not verified by TEC. They were minor in nature, however, and we did go out into the site and confirm, but TEC has not issued a final memo to state that everything is in compliance.
Is it spelled out on here what's missing?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
An existing tree. Existing tree.
So again, they were minor. The property owner of 38 Benjamin Street is not displayed on the plan. The survey property lines do not display bearing and distance. In addition, there was also the stop sign that was not listed on the plan.
Okay. Thank you.
How much has he got left in the bond?
The remaining is 14,000.
Thoughts?
I know, I think, all this stuff should be relatively easy enough for him to clean up. I think, hold on to the bond until he finishes up and we get everything verified and, I think if we release the bond before everything's done, jump in the queue make sure that things get done the way we want it, so.
There's no one here to speak on behalf of the developer,
Not that I can see.
so, I mean, I think it makes sense to let it be final when it's final.
Agreed.
Or we can release a partial bond.
Well, there's no one here to even suggest, to ask for it.
Did he email?
We did receive notification from Dina DeHulu to request that the bond be reduced. We only have $320 remaining in the escrow account for review of this particular project. So if we did want to have TEC review the final outstanding items, we would need to see whether or not that would be sufficient for TEC to review and issue a final comment letter. So that means that the applicant may potentially need to provide more funding for the engineering review.
So then we can send an email back to Hulu saying that if they need more time in the winter and TEC comes up with a release number, a partial release. But I agree with you guys.
Yeah, I think we send him a message, ask him to clean it up, but in the interim, I don't see any reason for any change.
I mean, the letter is from August 21st, so
Right.
it's been a while.
Yeah, exactly, it's been a few months now, and no updates yet, so.
Okay, so we won't release the bond. Want to float a motion?
Yeah, motion not to release the bond until it's finished, complete,
Second.
or until TEC gives us a partial release.
Seconded.
Discussion?
No.
Good?
Good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Next up, public hearing is continued, 181R School Street, a hearing in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81T, the Town of Groveland Subdivision Rules and Regulations, and Article 14 of Groveland's General Bylaws, to hear the application of Groveland Redevelopment LLC, care of Louis Minucci Jr., 231 Sutton Street, Suite 1B, North Andover, Mass. 01845, requesting approval of a six-lot definitive subdivision plan labeled 181R School Street, Groveland, Massachusetts, and associated stormwater management and land disturbance permit. The site is located in the residential 2 zoning district. The proposed subdivision is located at 181R School Street, Groveland, 01834, assesses map 34, parcel 13. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So last update we had from the previous meeting was TEC had given their comments back to the Moore and Cameron group. We were waiting on response, and we had found that the Cameron group had updated some of the plans. So I'd like to hear, what wish of the board, do you guys want to hear from TEC first, or TEC's here, right? Yep, there he is, okay, how you doing? Or do we want to go right, we'll just go right into the updates from the Moran group and then go from there? Sound good?
Do the two of you have a preference of how this, I mean, it sounds like it's gonna be a call and an answer kind of situation.
I know, I want to hear from TEC probably first. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think.
It's our engineer in here, what the,
Yeah, that's fine. No, just to
For
let.
now.
So my name is Bill Barnum, I'm with TEC, a civil engineer, working on behalf of the planning board. So previously, we've reviewed two separate applications and submitted
Oh,
two
no.
separate letters.
We need the mic.
Your mic?
Perfect, there we go.
You start over for the.
Sure, yeah, no, my name is Bill Burnham, I work with TEC, I'm a civil engineer working on behalf of the planning board. So previously, we've reviewed two separate applications and submitted two separate review letters. We previously have gone through and had 6 remaining items from the previous review letter. Out of those 6 items, there's been another submission provided, and from what we've reviewed today, there's only 1 remaining item on the letter. In that item, it is actually one of the remaining items that we'd like the planning board to review on its own. There were several items that we designated as something we deferred to the planning board review because it wasn't purely a civil-based issue. So in those items, the first one was comment number 1, which had to do with lot regularity. In particular, parcel A, which you can see on the bottom left here, is about a 4,000 square foot lot that currently does not have a designated owner. The biggest thing we want to designate is who would be the property owner in that case and who would be in charge of the maintenance of this lot. The second question we had was regarding comment number 8, which had to do with the lighting. There's currently no proposed lighting in place. According to the subdivision regulations, there is intended to be a proposed lighting plan, but however, the applicants requested a waiver against this. The 9th comment we had was regarding pervious driveways. In this, there was supposed to be an O&M plan designating the maintenance of these driveways, and currently, from what we've seen, there has been no O&M plan in place to maintain them. Along with this, we believe that in purview of getting this approved, we think the O&M should be revised to also include maintenance of the bioretention areas on each separate lot. Currently, all the bioretention basins are not located in the public right-of-way. They're all in separately owned lots. We believe that if it's included within the property deeds to maintain these bioretention areas with the landowner themselves and described out each separate lot on the deed with the O&M plan, so separate O&M plans for separate lots. Currently, it's only one O&M plan for the entire right-of-way, which may get confusing when they go to maintain this and they read their own deed, if it's the entire property. And the last one we had was regarding comment number 23, which was in reference to the sewage system and the pumps. Currently, there are separate sewage pumps for each separate lot. However, this is currently under the review of the Water and Sewer Division. With that being said, if there's any questions.
So are these pumping chambers, or they just?
They're just separate.
100-gallon tank with a pump in it?
As far as I'm aware, they're just separate systems. I mean, this was something that we looked at and we immediately went, this is something outside of our purview. So as far as the sewage system goes, it's more up to the sewer and water department. From what we reviewed, we were simply looking at utility conflicts, so, and we didn't see any utility conflicts in the most recent revision.
Rebecca, is there any comment from Water and Sewer on that?
They have not issued any comments at this point in time. I believe their peer reviewer, Environmental Partners, is reviewing what has been submitted or is anticipating reviewing whatever is submitted.
In the most recent round of back and forth, I saw that there were a couple of issues that you were going to defer to Water and Sewer. Which were those? 23 is one of them.
Number 1, comment 1.
Under which heading?
It's under zoning. It's on the first page.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep,
The lot regularity?
yep.
No, I meant for deferring to Water and Sewer.
Oh, I believe it's only 23
Thought there were more
for
than
water and sewer.
And didn't they address comment 9 by saying that they were going to switch to make the driveways?
So the
Pervious?
driveways themselves are still pervious.
Okay.
The sidewalks are now bituminous. The original response in the secondary response of comment 9 was regarding the sidewalks,
Oh, okay.
because the sidewalks had gone from pervious sidewalks to bituminous sidewalks, and there was no detail provided.
So the driveways are supposed to be pervious now,
The driveways are pervious, yeah.
and that's the thing you were raising. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
the main comment in that regard is simply this, having a maintenance plan for those pervious driveways in place, and having that maintenance plan be part of the deed itself for each lot.
Why are the driveways pervious?
More of a question for them than me.
Yeah, I was going to say, now that we've heard TEC, do we want to bring up more and
Sure.
Group and have them give out the new?
Bill?
Yep.
Then we can always bring them back up.
Thanks.
Good evening. For the record, Scott Cameron with the Moore and Cameron Group, 66 Elm Street in Danvers, Massachusetts. Here on behalf of Groveland Redevelopment LLC. Eric Loth is also here as representing the owner in the LLC. Thank you for having us again tonight. I was last here before you on September 10th. We had quite a lengthy meeting. I wanted to walk you through, hopefully, the updates to the plans and what's transpired since then over the last 2 months. And then I can, while we had Bill just up regarding the open items, I can hit on those briefly. We can start there perhaps while we're talking about it. So the sewer pumps, what we're proposing for these are private ejector pumps. These are package pump systems. E1 is one of the more popular brands that puts these together. It's not like a septic system pump. It's a different thing. It's just a sewer ejector pump. And the Water and Sewer Department is reviewing that with their review consultant. We've been exchanging emails with Colin. We're expecting to have that back in just before or right after the Thanksgiving week by December 2nd. And they're doing a technical review just to make sure what we put together they're good with. But based on the elevations, there won't be any issues lifting the sewage up from the homes that are lower in elevation up to the gravity sewer in School Street. We provided a lot of documentation and calculations in that regard that they're reviewing. The parcel A, I wanted to hit on that. This can be handled in a number of different ways. I would more than likely just recommend it stay attached to the deed of the nearest parcel, which would be right here, and it would be their responsibility. It's excess land. It's noted as not buildable. It's not intended to be a building lot. It's just the land that's kind of left over once we lay everything out.
Would that go to DeVoe, or are you talking lot 1 or lot 6?
The subdivision lot 1, so it would go to,
This would be owned by 1. Okay.
yep. Just bringing up the lotting plan. So it would go with lot 1.
And that would still meet lot regularity requirements?
It would be a separate parcel. It's noted as a separate parcel. We have to do such, we have to do so because it's a zoning code. So lot one in its own that's the building lot, and this would be a separate parcel that's attached to it. It could also be, someone could also buy it. So if there's a fair market value and the adjacent landowner wanted to acquire that,
Do you have an idea what the fair market value would be for a non-buildable sliver lot?
it would be based on the land value, and obviously that would be something that they'd have to work out after the fact.
Like concept, if it's
Nope.
$1,000, a 10 or 100 or more.
Outside of my purview.
Sure.
I would say it's useless to just the person that owns 181 School.
Right, it might be useful to that person, right?
It just, you said useless to A1?
Anybody but the person at 181 School.
Correct.
Yeah, right now it's simply marked as a do not touch, leave it as, there are some trees and it is a little bit wooded for what is there. So if they're, it's just left as is in the current
I know, I'd
proposal.
ask the guy at 181 School if it's something he'd like to have, if you wanted to donate it to him.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so, recommending that sliver
Go with lot
be
one.
attached to lot one, at least in my eyes, I would say that speaks to lot regularity because you're essentially extending lot one, even though you're saying keeping it as two separate lots, but
Right.
as its own lot, it doesn't meet anything to qualify as a lot itself.
The problem I would see is the minute you jump off a lot one to mow your sliver, even with a 24-inch wide mower, you're trespassing on 181 School Street.
I would also argue to the board that there is a question as to whether or not you can legally create a not buildable lot per the subdivision rules and regulations and the lot regularity as explained in our zoning.
Right.
So if the applicant wanted to prove otherwise, I would suggest that we get a legal opinion from them stating that they have the ability to do so.
I tend to,
Does the town planner have a recommendation as to what the best way to handle this issue might be?
I believe
Donate
the
it to
board is on
181
the
School
same,
Street.
is on the
Yeah.
right path.
That it should go to the owner. That would effectuate the purpose of regular lots and things like that. And, yeah. Is the owner amenable to essentially donating that sliver to the
181.
Derek DeVoe if he wants it?
is Derek DeVoe here?
No.
Oh.
It would certainly give a nice buffer to the street that's going to be
Yeah,
going right next to it.
I don't want to pen someone in to make a financial decision here right now.
No.
But I think that'd be our recommendation that, I don't know how you take a 5x10 lot or 6x3, whatever that is, and say, let's sell that as an individual lot. I think,
Like who would,
that could be a little goodwill.
That's if he's willing to accept it.
Right, well, that's exactly, yeah.
right.
If 181,
Well, the owner's here. Do you want to speak to it?
But 181's not here.
No, I know, but
Right.
we're just asking about, we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out what options are available, and it'd be helpful to know what the owner thinks about the concept.
Sure. So for the record, Eric Lowe from Groveland Redevelopment.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to reach out to the owner there and see, because it's really not going to do anything for us, and it gives them a little bit more of a buffer.
So if
That's a
he was
good idea.
amenable, the LLC would be amenable to,
I think so. So I'll try to reach out.
Right.
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
not trying to commit you to something like here, right now, but.
Okay. No, I think it makes sense, though. It doesn't do much for the subdivision. If there was a reason to hold on to it,
It seems like it's an albatross for lot one.
I think
If
the
you're
only,
buying it.
the only thing we really want to be able to do is probably put some landscaping along that edge, and then, once that's done, then maybe hand it off or something like that, so.
And we can work through that with easements as well to make sure that we maintain the landscaping.
Okay, regarding the lighting, I'm just going to read from the definition in the subdivision regulations. We don't believe this is a waiver. It says, where required by the planning board, Street and pedestrian lighting shall be installed to conform to the type and style. So we are proposing no lighting. Ultimately, it's your discretion. We don't feel it's necessary in kind of modern subdivision roads, especially when they're small. Most of these homes are going to have their own streetlights anyways, so it just becomes redundant. And the expectation would be that this is eventually turned back to the town as a public right-of-way, and then the town would have to absorb the cost of keeping that light maintained and illuminated. So we don't do these a lot, but ultimately it's your discretion. If you would like a light, we can put a light.
What does it look like on Ann Street and Georgia Street? Do they have lights?
I'm just thinking of the interest of health and safety.
Yeah.
One of the boxes we have to check.
I mean, just in general, I don't know why we would want.
We would like to see a lighting plan. It would have to be more than one.
I mean, yes, I think we can all agree that most houses have lights in front of it, but not everyone has, a post right into the driveway. Some of it's attached to the house. So if you have a house that's set back in the lot, that's not necessarily going to illuminate the street. And then you have to think of people walking on the street at night with the sidewalk on that side.
Well, and the idea, I mean, sort of just generally, the concept that if it's gonna be part of the neighborhood, it should conform to what the neighborhood, sort of looks like.
Agreed.
So if there are lights in Ann and Georgia and around, why would it be any different on the new development?
All our new subdivisions have lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where you're gonna have a robust tree planting, those are gonna
Yeah.
fade out the lights from the houses
Right.
anyways.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
only gonna have light when you have a full moon.
but to your point, I think there's health and safety concerns there too.
So does anyone off the top know what the, like the bylaw that or the sort of authority that we
Katie,
have to request?
what did Katie Lane just do?
So it says, section 70-5.15, streetlights, where required by the planning board, street and pedestrian lighting shall be installed to conform to the type and style in general use in the town of Groveland, unless otherwise specified by the planning board.
So it's completely discretionary to the planning board?
It is up to the planning board to decide.
So,
If I could ask a question,
Solid gold lamppost it is.
Mr. Chair, what we've done in other places, and I don't know if this would meet your code here or meet the bylaw, is use the post lights as the lighting for the neighborhood, because I'd hate to see those regular sodium halide overhead lights that you see on big streets. It doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense in more rural. I mean, you go to bed at night and you can see that thing out the window. I'd much rather have, I don't know if there's an opportunity to do some other type of lighting that would provide enough lumens for the neighborhood to keep it safe for people walking on the sidewalk, but not have those big overhead lights. So-
No, I think
No, we do-
that's why I had it in mind too. I know on my street, on Hillview, there's the single post with the light in the glass thing on the top.
Yeah, we can, we can
Like a
certainly, we can certainly covenant that it's a requirement of the lot,
Yeah.
similar to what we're doing with the bioretention. So each lot has to have a 6-foot mounted residential sconce at each driveway. So, and that's going to cover, quite a bit of illumination. the
I
project.
don't think that's what we're thinking. I think we're thinking more of a,
A
What was
street
required
light.
on Billis?
We required street lighting on Billis, and it's the same type of ornate type lighting that is being discussed, the black post
Yeah,
with the
black
small.
fluted,
12, it's probably like 12 feet, right? I don't know, what's
You
the
know
height of it?
where Billis
Yeah.
12 to
is?
15.
12, 15 feet,
You know where the cemetery is?
Yeah, I know where it is.
Right next to it.
Yep,
Okay.
New development.
yep. Okay. The driveway, regarding the pervious driveway and the bioretention, we're committed to trying to implement sustainability wherever we can, so we left that as an option. It's designed and assumed to be impervious, but we left that as an option for owners, so should they want to have a pervious driveway and do that, it's fine. If they don't, it's also fine. It would just be extra benefit if they have that, so we wanted to keep that on the plans as an option for homeowners. We can certainly, and I agree with putting a couple of O&M bullets into, that go in with the deed. Lot owners shall be responsible for maintaining bioretention, and it's a small O&M we can put right in. It's a continued problem, not just, it's not your community. We see this all over the place. We do all this work, hand them off, and then they're quickly forgotten about. So by putting them on the deed, we have something that we can refer back to. So
Well, they can do
I agree with that.
a maintenance plan, and they have to submit it every year or every other year to the building inspector.
If that's what the code is requiring, of homeowners to do, and that's going to be townwide, so, they're going to have to comply with that. So, I don't know if that's where it is, but we could certainly put the O&M for the driveways and the bioretention, and we want that to succeed long-term.
The impervious driveways or pervious driveways, did you not meet the stormwater calculations?
No, we did. Like I said, we designed them to be impervious. So the whole thing, we've assumed, there was a question about how much of it is impervious. The actual impervious number of the whole property, we expect to be 14 to 15%, just under that. We've designed the lots to be 25%, and we've designed the road to be over 80% impervious. So we've just taken conservative numbers for the purpose of stormwater management design, because things change and there's variability, so we add things into the design. And so-
There was a point where TEC said that that what you guys had done had been excessively, or extra conservative,
Yep,
right? Yeah.
But sometimes you see the problem with those pervious driveways, if they're not vacuumed and they use sand, that becomes an impervious driveway.
I think I
Very
gave the.
quickly.
Yeah, I think I gave the reference of my mother's driveway is impervious, and she's sanding it every year. It's been there for 10 years. They've never maintained it once. It's still working fine. So it depends. I wanted to keep it as an option, and that the requirements for cleaning and avoiding sand usage and things like that are part of the O&M. But we just wanted to encourage that.
So is there a problem if some of the owners go one way and some go the other way?
Nope.
It's
If an owner wants to come in and they have an eye towards environmental protection, sustainability, they might want to do that.
Okay.
If not, they don't have to. It gives some options, but we've designed the infrastructure for the project has been designed to accommodate everybody doing impervious.
I will say they work pretty well when they work. There's no water on them.
Yep. We're seeing a lot more on even single-family lot work, especially new construction. We're starting to see that volunteered.
Driveways And actually,
And I'm not
businesses.
really all that concerned about the maintenance myself, just because it's up to the homeowner and it doesn't count towards the stormwater management.
Well, that's what-
If it counted towards the stormwater management, then it would be more of an issue.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, and they tend to stay a little better de-iced, because as snow melts, when the sun hits it and snow melts, the water goes through it and dissipates rather than sitting on the pavement, so they tend to be a little better in the winter months, so it kind of, there's less of a need for sanding on those, so, yeah, we're doing what we can where we can do it.
Sure.
So I think that was it on the TEC stuff. I just wanted to go through quickly some of the other changes we made. Of course, we had a good meeting, discussed a lot in that first meeting, and shortly thereafter, went out and did another, walk around of the property, around the property, up and down the street, to take a closer look at some of the areas of concern that were brought up by residents at Whitestone Village, as well as some of the people on Ann Street. We did interview and meet with a couple of the residents on Ann Street while we were out there. We looked at some of the issues in their yards, and as it kind of came up to the site, so we could better make sure we're minimizing impacts. I think the biggest thing here that had a lot of discussion is ensuring we had a protected tree buffer around the entire property. And if you recall, the original plan, we were clearing a lot of the lot line along 181. There was a retention pond in this area, and we didn't really have any denoted protection lines for the trees. So we've added that in as a 20-foot buffer, which is 5 feet further than the zoning setback, which includes markers to be placed on the lots, at the lot lines, and around that perimeter to make sure that that area is marked out as a no-cut zone. Of course, it's also shown on the plan. We've done this landscaping plan. We were asked to provide more detail on the types of trees. The plan not only includes the street trees, which we have a variety of a few different maples, which will have different red and yellow foliage in the fall, but the variety is also helpful in case you do have a blight or disease or something that doesn't take out every tree and only take out one of the species. So we did mix that up. We found this to be a very good aesthetic in this area. We've added some infill of some evergreens. There's some gaps kind of in the existing tree line back here. So where we have the homes, we added some infill with some evergreens in these areas just to help with some of the sight line. There's also quite a big grade change. So, between where this house is, it comes up several feet and then it drops back down, and these homes are quite a bit lower. So with the tree, the protected tree buffer and the trees that we're infilling here and down along, where there's no trees here down right near School Street, we're infilling all that. We've also added, there's a gap, the 181 is cleared up to, and you can see kind of here in areas just beyond the lot line, so their lot's fully cleared. So when this is cleared up to that lot line, there's not a whole lot left, there's really nothing left. So we propose to add some more evergreen screening in this area, which would be the gap, and then this is the spot I mentioned, there is already some existing vegetation in this area closer to School Street. And then we added in a no-cut zone on the back of 181. So we removed that retention pond and made sure we had the 20 feet all the way around. I think we talked about the sidewalk already. We did change this on the plans from the porous to the impervious. So we had requested a waiver. We no longer have the need for it. We're not requesting that waiver anymore. We'll meet the town specification for that. And then there was also, these are some of the board comments. There was a request to do some calculations and sizing during the construction phase to make sure these basins were adequately sized. And I know Bill and TEC reviewed this, but we did go through and do these calculations to make sure these are functioning as intended. So these are all adequately sized. And again, as this project is over 1 acre of land alteration, this would fall under your EPA stormwater pollution prevention plan. So there's regular weekly monitoring after rainfalls. It's a constant update and reporting process that I know we've worked with TEC when they're doing their construction inspections on other projects in town. A lot of our focus was on the stormwater management. There were a lot of concerns raised by folks in the public that we heard from your board. Obviously, it was something we were aware of when we started this design. And just to walk you through some of there's subtle changes, they're technical changes, but they go a long ways to alleviating some of the concerns and anxiety that someone might have when the land is changed from what it is now to a neighborhood. So one, I think I mentioned there was concern about the proximity of this retention pond that was here in the original design to 181. 181 drains across kind of through the property now. And there was concerns that this might, I don't know, potentially back up or might flood back into the yard. So we just removed it. We removed it from the design, and we added in an area drain, catch basin in the yard here. So the water that does come off of this lot would get picked up here and brought through the closed drainage system for the development. We provided a lot more detail in the form of grading just to direct, the lot builders, the water that comes down here is going to go back around into this rain garden here, for example, and that goes back out into the new street drainage system. Clarifications, of course, the protection of the trees. Somebody can't clear up to the tree line because we're going to protect that, and that buffer in itself is a great barrier. There's also a very large field stone wall, and the water does come down in the existing condition to a point here, and then it probably seeps through the wall and it can make its way out. But that stone wall itself will help steer and contain water. And in total, we've made sure that wherever water might be exiting this property now, we're reducing not only the flow of water, but the volume of it. So with the measures we put into this for factors of safety into the stormwater design, I would expect that if the abutters at Whitestone are having any water issues, you can see what's been built over there. There's catch basins and drainage and swales, and there's a lot of measures they put on their property to control stormwater for their neighborhood themselves. I would expect to see an improvement in less water going to those areas once this is done. We've also, again, you can see we've added grades and detail here to direct builders. The water in the backyard should be pushed towards the retention pond. The water in the backyard should be pushed here. We've shifted these two rain gardens away from the back of the Ann Street residences, which was something we talked about when we met with them on site and interviewed them with some of their issues they're having. And so again, we've put a lot of emphasis into, again, they don't, from 1,000 feet up looking at a plan, they don't look like big changes, but the details here, I know this is what TEC reviewed when they were doing it, and we put a lot of emphasis into making sure that, we're confident it would work fine before. Now we've added extra measures in and additional measures in to make it crystal clear what the intent is. So that was a lot of the focus for the changes. I could keep going and talk about this stuff all night long, but
Can I just ask?
I'll turn it back to you.
Can I just ask, would the TEC representative agree with the concept, just that this project as developed, as it's designed, should be better for stormwater management than the current than the current layout for the abutters? Yeah. So we think this is an improvement in stormwater management overall.
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, of course, sorry.
So based on the current design, you're reducing peak flows and increasing TSS and phosphorus treatment on the site and leaving in all directions. Where you don't have major developed areas like your buffers here and on the left side here, most of this area is left relatively untouched following development. So you're seeing very similar drainage patterns as you would today. So to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, no, that's,
I would say that from the town department side of things, we are concerned about the amount of stormwater on personal property and whether or not those homeowners will in fact maintain those structures. I mean, we've seen in many recent occurrences with, I know not now since we're in drought conditions, but more recently when there was flooding, we had calls coming through town hall right and left. We have flooding, we have flooding. Granted, again, we never saw that much rainfall in the short amount of time we did, but a lot of people didn't realize, like, oh, that's a swale on my property. I'm supposed to leave that there. I'm not supposed to maintain. I thought that was the town's property. I thought this, or somebody hasn't cleaned this detention pond for X amount of years. Is this the town's property or is this my property? So I think those clear delineations, as TEC brought up, is extremely important because as designed, it will work. And if it's done properly, it will work, which is what both engineers are stating. But if not maintained, whose responsibility is it? Because the road is going to cause an issue on, and it's going to lead to the issues with the lots, and it's going to be our problem if we move forward with acceptance of the roadway, and we do not have the resources to maintain drainage infrastructure, especially when we don't own it. Not that we want to own it, but that's something that the town is very concerned about.
so is one of the fixes for that to make it very specific in the deeds that go out that, hey, this is your swale pond, this is your swale, you've got to maintain it and you have an obligation to.
Exactly, as Bill mentioned, and that's why we want to make it very clear on the deeds and not to put any unnecessary burden on the homeowner, but if they're buying these lots, we do not have the resources to take care of the drainage on there. And if we have a deed and they come to us and there's an issue, we have a level of enforcement because they're not maintaining and it's running off into their neighbor's property or the roadways becoming flooded and things of that nature.
Well, and also they're coming in with their eyes open because they're buying it subject to the deed and, we would presume that their counsel would advise them, about, hey, there's this requirement, rather than something being sprung on somebody after the fact.
And that's why we want to make it
Yeah.
explicitly stated in the deed, because as you know, with any of the deeds, you specifically, if you don't list it out, subject to drainage easement or subject to drainage, whatever, you're gonna not read this entire lengthy document after you
Sure.
sign, your life away and know that, oh, that O&M plan that was attached to that, oh yeah, that goes to that structure that's on that plan that you didn't really look at, that goes to your lot.
100%.
And what happens when they sell and the next person?
Well, then it's on the deed.
That's when it gets
The deed
lost, though.
The deed gets, the language gets carried over. It's a condition that runs with the land is the.
Unless you're a
is the term.
lawyer, you're not reading the deed.
Well, your lawyer,
lost.
when you're buying property, you better have a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean,
And then how do you police it when you've got a detention pond in the back? And this isn't,
Yeah,
the engineer's problem or.
True.
So when you've got growth, excess growth coming out of there, you reforest that drainage basin, later on.
yeah.
And it just,
Yeah, what-
it just goes back to, it happens on every subdivision.
no, it's
Go
a
around
very
town
good.
and anywhere else.
The enforcement concept is a very important point here, and so I guess I would wonder also, who enforces when the ponds need to be cleaned and when they need to be due? You can say, okay, well, these are the
Not until there's a
requirements, and it's on
problem.
you.
You're not gonna enforce it until there's a problem.
Well, right, and when there's a problem means that there's an impact, right? And-
Right.
And, when there's a problem, there's already.
already too late.
Someone else with down the hill whose house is getting flooded.
It
because of the
becomes
problem.
Sam's problem.
Well, right. Well, yeah, because it becomes Sam's problem after it becomes the abutting homeowner's problem, right?
I understand what everybody's saying, but
Yeah.
the reality of it, it's a tough one.
Oh, it is, and I don't, I definitely like the idea of having it in each lot's deed that they need to maintain it.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to, traceability, accountability,
Sure.
everything you want there. And if-
Notice.
If something does happen, it's right up, listen, if the water came right down here, that's his fault, and go after him, and he's responsible to fix your stuff, right?
Right.
And you can't have that traceability of, hey, listen, here's the notice right up front, that when you do buy this house, at whatever point down in future history that you buy the house, there's that notice that, and, let's presume that everyone who, is gonna buy these properties has due diligence done and notes these, the noted, because we can't assume otherwise.
The developer
But-
did his part, though. You can see where they've taken the lot and they've gradually graded it back up so it doesn't go onto anybody else's property. So from that point on,
And I think that's
a
also
tough
poses part of the other problem, the issue that I have is with the lots are not, we don't have a developer, right? They're just doing the rough work, and we don't have any ownership for each lot. It's gonna be sold off individually, so we don't have
developer's
one.
gonna have to be, it's gonna have to be developed to this plan. Right? And TEC will go out there and make sure that all the grades are the way they are.
So has there been any additional discussion about whether, I know we talked at some point about the potential for having the owner get one developer or whatnot. Has there been any discussion about that, or is,
You kind of, I don't know if you can do that. If you want to sell the lots and.
Mr. Chair, happy to answer that question.
that's helpful?
So we're committed, my company, we're committed to putting in the roadway and all the lot improvements, because I think the biggest opportunity for something to go wrong is not necessarily someone putting the 2x4s up, but someone coming in not doing the rain garden right, not doing that stuff. So we want to stay involved at least to the end of that. We may end up building the houses. I can't guarantee that, but I definitely we'll commit to doing the road and all the lot improvements and make sure everything's done properly. And then the second piece I would say about the rain garden and everything, one, putting in the deed, I think is the first important part. What we've done some other places too is probably the easiest way to get it done is set up an HOA. Because for every person to have to do it on their own once a year, if we had an HOA and somebody just comes in, does all of them at once. So maybe we seed that with some money for the first couple of years to make sure it happens. And then, they'd probably each have to throw a few $100 a year in to get it done. But I think if we set something like that up, that would be helpful too, so.
Those are helpful comments.
I agree.
Absolutely,
It's not up.
agreed. And then,
Say that, but
Yeah.
it's definitely
Yeah.
a step in the right direction.
because that would be a question too, is the repercussions for the surrounding properties, that all of a sudden it is the last, you don't know until it's too late, and now all of a sudden everybody else is flooded around.
Well, you don't know what improvements the other landowners have done. Have they graded into that property to shed the water away from their house? You can't just, there's a lot of moving pieces.
In an
Yep, agreed.
in an HOA, there'd probably be some money set aside on an annual basis to review and just make sure everything is okay.
Well, an
Like,
HOA,
in an ongoing fashion.
If it's maintained, then you ideally would not have any issues.
Yeah,
Right.
And the HOA would
And the HOA
definitely be
means
helpful,
it, yeah.
so.
interesting.
Maintenance plan,
I like
best
that idea.
business practices, I mean, that's.
If I could just a little bit further on this, this is all very good conversation, and I'm glad you're hitting on this. There's been a lot of change, in the last 4 to 5 years or so about how this is perceived and having these measures on your properties. It's gone from a nuisance to a norm to actually, I am seeing people asking, where is this, where is that are buying these homes. It is starting to become more normal. And when we have things like an HOA, when you have things in a deed, just like whenever you buy a property, you have to do a radon test, or whenever you buy a property, you have to do X, Y, and Z, this is starting to become normalized. And I think it would be a shame if we didn't do it because we were afraid somebody wasn't going to maintain it. We've got to start pushing this into place, and we don't want consolidated stormwater. I don't want everything going to one spot. As an engineer, as a designer, the best thing we do is spread this out and try to put the burden on all the lots rather than how it was 30, 40 years ago, where you put it all into one area. We're doing the best we can. This is how we do it. So I feel comfortable. And finally, again, with the additional measures we've built into the design, these factors of safety, honestly, like all these bioretentions could fail, the water's also going to go to the same spot. And it's still going to work. So we've got all that buffering built into it, and that's what Bill reviewed, and he can speak to that too. But there's quite a bit, like I said, we are anticipating about 15% impervious coverage on the entire property. We designed it for 25% on the lots and 80% on the road right away. It's quite a big buffer on top of the things that we're already doing in the calculations.
And for me, it's not so much who's going to buy the property and what they're going to do with it, because it can happen to any property. My neighbor could buy the property and change the drainage and completely flood my yard, and then it becomes an issue between me and him. I mean,
Yep.
what I'm here to really see is everything's in place. It's in place to inform the property owner of what his responsibilities are. And then, it's up to the property owner to do those responsibilities. If he doesn't act upon it, then he's gonna be held accountable for it.
But the fact that they're going one step above an HOA,
Well, it speaks a lot for the
Agree.
developer.
I agree.
but we also like to see a lighting plan.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see a lighting plan.
Yep, got that. Okay. That's all I have for tonight.
We appreciate you coming in and, I think I can speak for everyone when we say we appreciate that, it sounds like you guys have had a really, helpful back and forth and, it definitely looks like good faith work trying to address concerns that are, coming up through the process. So, to that extent, we really appreciate the time and effort you put forth.
All right, so just to kind
Does the board have any recommendation on how many, so I know on my street, I have 6 homes. And there's, I'm trying to count the lights,
Usually,
trying to give
yeah,
them
it's
idea.
usually almost like every other, and it almost illuminates in between,
What is it?
but not directly on.
So I,
And
same,
they
same
have-
type of development being.
What does it
6
look like in your
houses.
street?
I think I
What does it look like in
have
Georgia, they're
They have,
similar.
3.
Yeah.
you guys have resources for lighting.
I mean, I'm
Putting it on
gonna
a
assume they're
plan.
smarter people than me that know how many streetlights. need.
Right, they have
yeah.
their own resources for that.
I would think 2 would be more than enough. Maybe we look at 3. They do, they are a nuisance. I mean, they're going to be, rest assured, it's going to be shining straight into somebody's bedroom, and the owner's going to be out there with a can of black spray paint, covering up that sign.
They also have the back lens that are blacked out.
Yeah.
Against them.
That's usually what ends up happening, is they end up focusing them so concisely that they
Well,
don't.
for safety for plowing, or if there's any emergency at night for police or
Mm-hmm.
fire.
I think the consultant really should be, our light department. They're the ones that are gonna have to maintain them in the end, and they have a pretty good layout of,
Yeah.
and understanding
I
of
mean,
what
I think
lights
on-
work.
Sunset Circle would be a great,
Friendship?
Comparison.
yes, because they have 4 lots, and they have streetlights,
Which one's that?
Sunset Circle.
Sunset Circle.
Okay.
Yeah. I think my street's only a little bit bigger than this.
It's on Salem Street.
It's dark out right now. I'll drive back after the meeting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm on Valley Farm, and that's same thing. We have 6 lots, same dead end. So
Yeah.
How many lights do you have?
I think there's 3. I think there's two
Yeah.
midway down, and then 1 at the very end.
Sounds right. Yeah, there's usually one at the cul-de-sac and then along the way.
Yeah, that's it. You can take a look at Hillview Drive as well. That's, I think, just a little, 1 or 2 more lots, but I think there's only like 4 lights or something.
It's low lighting, right? It's just enough where it's safe where you could walk out, but still fairly dark, and
Yeah.
there's greenery around things that is covered that you don't have that piercing, and it's one of the more decorative light poles where you don't have to.
That
So
kind
when you
of
walk the
just-
dog, you
yeah.
can see the coyotes.
Correct, exactly. As you can.
Yeah, we'll put some on there. We can get that together.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything? Any questions up here?
I mean, I think just to summarize, we want to see a lighting plan, I think. I think we'd like to see some kind of statement in the plan to address the lot irregularity for the parcel A. Right?
And then do we, I think we all agree that the requirements of maintenance should be in the deeds. Is there somewhere where we, prior to, like at this point, sort of confirm that?
I don't know functionally how that works, to
Yeah.
be very honest.
Because it feels like a resolved issue.
Yep. I could speak to that. So typically, it's upon getting your first building permit would be the time that we have to have like the HOA, because that's usually about the time you're going to have a lot under contract or a loan under contract to build it or something. It allows us to have the road finished, the infrastructure in place for the most part. Might still have like finished paving to do, but everything will be in place so we can actually have an O&M that is relative to the built condition.
Oh, sure.
And then that would be a
We can have a condition on our approval that the
Yep.
deeds are written that way, right?
Yes, we've done
Yep.
that with other
Yeah.
developments as
That's-
well.
yep.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything? Any questions?
No, I don't know if they want to design a HOA plan.
We could certainly get a draft one, but I just find they end up changing so much between now and actually, like, getting the documents together, because we can give you a draft one so you can see what one might look like.
That way it shows us that you're gonna follow through with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
And then,
that would be part of the conditions. We could do that as part of the
I was
conditions as
I
well.
was gonna say, could we make an
Wanna see
HOA
what-
part of the conditions?
How they'll, spell it out.
Would we be able to have a condition that the development is subject to HOA?
We could do a finding of fact, and then we could make a condition that prior to a building permit or something of that. We could make it a finding of fact that the development is moving forward with the homeowners association, and that a condition that would state that they would need to share the draft agreement or draft HOA documents with the board prior to a building permit or something of that nature. So we could do that.
Okay.
Or prior to CO.
Thank you. Everyone else good?
just action plan for reaching out to 181 School Street, and so you guys are just gonna reach out to that gentleman and see what's what.
But that still looks like it's gonna have, landscaping on it, trees.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right, I think Rebecca
It'd be
was
a
talking about.
post-development.
there might be some easement possibilities or things like that.
But that would be post-development as well.
You could do like a buffer on the lot as well, so you could make it an easement, a buffer. You can do many things to make sure that the landscaping is maintained.
Yeah, I would presume that when the developer comes back with a plan to us for parcel A, that the conversations and agreements have already been had and made, so.
Sure. Other than that, I'm all set.
There was a list of questions that I had here, and I wanted to make sure that they were answered.
Oh, there was someone on Zoom that had a question as well, I'm sorry. No.
I think
Someone have their hand raised on Zoom for a question?
Yes, I do. This is Linda Tomaselli and Alyssa Drive. I have a number of questions, but I'd like to go first to the HOA question. And I'm very concerned that we not find ourselves in a situation where, as someone said, requirements end up in a deed and it becomes the problem of the homeowner. Because, as someone else said, it's too late once the problem arises. So I'd like to suggest that the board probably does have the authority to require, as a reasonable condition of approval, that there be an ongoing HOA responsible for ongoing compliance. Because one of the problems with this plan is that, and I'm no engineer and know nothing really specific about technical requirements, but I do read ongoing responsibilities, compliance responsibilities. And when you have an interdependent plan like this one, you don't want to be in a situation where someone's home is damaged. They point to one homeowner who points to the adjoining homeowner, and all of a sudden everyone, maybe even the town, is involved in a lawsuit. So having the HOA in place is great, but you don't want it dissolved a year or two from now. It seems perfectly reasonable to me that the town should insist that the ongoing compliance responsibilities not be fragmented, that they be centralized, and that HOA remain in place, responsible to comply with the plans.
I think that's the direction we're trying to move, actually.
I tend to agree.
Well,
I agree.
that's not what I heard. That's not what I heard. What I heard was we can ask that we see a draft. But that's different from saying you must have this in place, it must remain in place, and it must continue to meet these standards.
Well, the draft.
Right, but we're not at the point of approving the subdivision at this point.
I don't know.
Oh, no,
don't
I
know that we can
understand.
Legally do that. If we
I
can
understand.
say-
As a matter of
Right,
fact, if I may, I before TEC leaves, I want to make sure that I understand an earlier response to the question whether the surrounding properties really are in terms of stormwater, water runoff, really are in a, or will be in a better position than they are now. The audio wasn't great, and I didn't hear the response clearly.
Okay, we can bring him back up here for that
Yeah, go ahead,
answer.
Bill, yeah.
But, Linda, what we had talked about was putting a HOA condition and the finding of fact, right? That's what Rebecca had mentioned, that we would put it in there that would hold true for the developer to create that. And the dissolving part is something that I'd have to look into. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
But we would have that as part of a condition, not just a good faith. It would be a finding of fact on the condition.
Yeah, I don't know if legally we
Okay.
can say that something needs to.
But the
exist.
developer has agreed, it was their actually
Idea.
recommendation,
Yeah.
so it was there, so I think that.
Oh, no, I heard that, and that's fine. But there's a very big difference between putting it in place and keeping it in place.
No, understood.
Agreed.
And the
Agreed.
board is mindful about this concern. I think we all share your concern on it, so it's not something that we would just let go of.
Yeah.
Agreed,
Well,
thank you.
there's no question that I have certainly, and I know that many other abutters have real concerns. And has TEC left? Is that the,
Oh, no, I'm still
We're
here.
standing there
No,
waiting.
no, He's just waiting.
He's ready to
Okay.
answer your question, Linda.
So Linda, we did look at their design and their various BMPs they use on this site, and based on the current modeling they have, the peak flows coming off in all directions of the site are either kept equal or reduced following the design being complete. Along with this, you also have TSS removal and phosphorus removal, which is part of the Massachusetts Stormwater Standards. And from everything we've seen, they are complying with that as well.
so the underlying modeling, I assume you test that. And part of the concern, the reason I ask is there are already neighbors, residents who have water problems, even currently, as I understand it, during the drought. So you're dealing with a situation where some people are kind of on the edge already. And they really cannot afford to have more water coming down. And if the answer is that's not going to happen, we will make sure that doesn't happen. That's one thing. But I do have some questions when I look at I'm looking at the definitive plan up on the screen right now, which, as you know, as initially drafted, did not even show most of Whitestone. It showed as basically undeveloped land. But there's something called an emergency spillway for overflow that heads straight into Whitestone. There's a road into which the street into which overflow enters, and that will funnel straight down into Whitestone. So again, as a layperson in all of this, just as a logical matter, I look at this, I know firsthand how steep the grade is, and that there are already water problems in the area. And I ask again, absolutely certain that
I
this will
mean,
work.
based upon the modeling that I've seen, it appears that if anything, you're kept to exactly what it is today as an undeveloped lot. If anything, you're going to see a reduction in flow following the design of these basins being put in place. The basins themselves will infiltrate stormwater throughout majority of your major storms, and they'll also help slow everything down, which is the main concern whenever you have a large storm come through. And I understand the concern with the emergency spillways position, but from what we've seen with the modeling, it does not appear that you'll have an increase in the amount of water coming off-site.
And just so you know, there can be no guarantee given, right? There's no guarantee with water and what it can do. We've all seen whether it's 7 inches in three hours or 10 inches. So no one can make any guarantees, but with the design and the way that engineering looks, it looks to be equal or better. And I think that's really what you can only ask for.
For a 24
Well, and that kind of takes me to my last set of questions. Although, as I understood it, it is supposed to be reliable that pre and post-development, post-development is no worse. But When this started, the first hearing in September, you all may remember, at least one board member, and I presume it was the chair, but you can't really tell when you're on Zoom, made a number of points, including objection to what he called the rat tail, which has been discussed at this meeting as well, but also to the intensity of the development of the parcel. And the comment was made by this board member, basically, why not go off and come back with something with fewer lots? Where we could have more in the way of buffer zones, particularly as you get near the edge of fairly steep slopes. Somehow, when the revised plan came back, there was more building on the site rather than less. And we still have not addressed the issue of the street separation, the right angles of streets. There were neighbors at the first meeting who had some real concerns about the streets. And I noticed in recent comments that the select board, for instance, objected to overdevelopment of this parcel and to concerns with the proximity of the streets. And I just wanted to ask that we kind of step back, take a deep breath, and say, maybe stop this train, which seems to be going straight down one path, and ask the question, why? Why is it not possible that a normal street perpendicular to School Street be built here with perhaps one or two fewer lots and greater buffer zones, wider buffer zones with more trees? I understand the need for houses. We all, want to provide the opportunity for people to build. We all are taxpayers and would like to see more taxpayers. But a handful of lots, handful of houses at the expense of a lot of neighbors is not, is going to generate some real concern. So I'll stop there and just ask the board if you could, help us understand how we're moving down a path and not talking about these other bigger issues.
Well, I think if you look at a couple things, so you mentioned the street distance and the street separation. We went through it at the last meeting. You can see that the street separation is congruent with the other streets off of School Street. It's basically equidistant to what they are if you look at Ann Street and George Street. It's very much the same spacing between those streets.
Yeah, but let me stop you there, because to me, what that sounds like is there's a legal requirement. It has been waived or overlooked in the past, and therefore we can ignore it going forward.
That's not the
I
case.
think the answer is exactly the opposite, that if this continues, then you have an area where streets are so close together so that, going back to the select board's comments, you will have, let's say the streets are supposed to be 400 feet apart on the same side. Within a space of a little bit more than 400 feet, maybe 400, 425, whatever it is, you will have three streets, granted offset. You'll have Ann Street, you'll have this street, you'll have Parker. Granted, that's on the other side of the road, but this middle street will be at a severe angle. And all of this happens in the space that under the regulation is supposed to accommodate only two perpendicular streets.
What regulations is that?
Yeah, what I would say is that there were a slew of comments back and forth between the proposers and our, technical folks. I mean, I invite you to take a look at the materials which are online as well. I mean, it's a lot of stuff if you take the time to go through it. And the level of detail is extreme. From areas of stormwater, which we have talked about a ton, which everybody really has huge concerns about and wants to make sure is equal or better. All these other issues, traffic has been factored in, all these different various things. And so when TEC found an issue where there's a problem with the bylaw or something along those lines, they flagged it, and then the developers addressed it. And so, what would be helpful to anyone, it was helpful to me when I looked through these documents, was to look at the back and forth between the developer and TEC. And it shows you that these people are working together to try to, not, railroad anybody. There's, 6 buildings here, there's 8 buildings on Ann Street right next door. So it's not they're not trying to plop a 40-unit condo right, like right in the spot.
I mean, I would also call out, just in regards to the street itself, that although Ann Street and George Street look to be very much perpendicular to School Street, the existing roads on the other side, so Parker Road, Carlita Road, and Abbott Street, are not perpendicular by any stretch. So calling out that
But
there
it's
should be
again-
perpendicular streets is not in congruence with what was already existing within the town.
It's not the planning board's role to say, we don't like this development because we don't like it. We have to have good reason, and it has to be some issue with the bylaws or some form of discretion that we have. We don't have the discretion to just say, well, we don't like the look of it.
Yeah, but I'm arguing exactly the opposite. I'm arguing that your regulations specifically require this, and that you must exercise discretion to permit it by violating those requirements. I'm not saying, again, I'm saying exactly the opposite. The rules are what they are, and here they're being varied by discretion.
I don't think they're being varied. We haven't approved anything yet either.
Right, exactly.
Oh, no, I understand that, but I should say would be. In order to approve this, they would have to be varied.
There's no way.
When you say they, you mean just the one, the perpendicular thing? And is that the one thing? that you think
There
is
are
in
at least 2. There's the perpendicular, the requirement that the streets, where possible, be at right angles. And there's been no one has addressed that at
Got a
all.
pretty wide entrance with a radius on either side.
And a
Opposed
buffer-
to like
and
Ann
a buffer,
Street,
right.
Georgia Street, they do not have, they're just right angles.
Right.
I
and
think
it-
we also have a site distance that they have to adhere to the Green Book, which TEC probably approved it.
They did. In the most recent back and forth, I saw that there was a discussion about site distance, and it met standards.
So before we continue to go back and forth, Linda, so we hear you. There's still a lot of discussion to be had. One of the things I'll ask, how many exemptions are you guys submit? Just the one, so is that exemption?
It's a waiver to reduce the street-to-street separation from 400 feet to 300
Okay.
feet.
All right.
And we presented the information, and that's what TEC reviewed.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Linda, was there any other questions you had?
Many, but I will hold them. But thank you very much.
If you feel free to send an email, and we have those emails. We've been compiling them together, and the board is looking at them, and we'll review and make sure that everything's accounted for.
Right.
But I appreciate the comments.
Mr. Chair, I
And
will
I-
note that she
I
did
did
submit
send a letter
an
earlier
email to
today.
Annie
Okay.
in your packet.
Okay,
Oh,
awesome.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. Would there be anyone else from the public that would like to speak? So we have a couple.
Please.
Yeah, in order to speak, just make sure you go up to the microphone, state your name, address.
Don Stoney, 608 Melissa Drive.
But before you start, I just wanted to let it be known, remember all the things we've discussed. This is still something that we're working through. we want to hear everyone's comments, and then we can go from there again. And if it needs to be extended, we can also go via email and phone calls, whatever it needs to be. So we appreciate you guys coming out and saying your piece as well, so.
Many of it was probably addressed. I just, some clarification. One,
Excuse me, sir, you need
Gotta be
to
at
have
the
the
mic.
microphone.
They're not gonna be able to hear you, yeah.
You can carry it with you.
all right. I believe this is where I'm at, 608 Alyssa Drive. I think you got it down as 300. So I just clarify, it is me there. Two, you brought up trees. One of my biggest concerns is privacy. In other words, right now, with no leaves on the trees, you can almost see all the way over to Annie Street. You can see once you develop this, my backyard's going to be looking in their back window. You mentioned putting up trees. Is misunderstanding that? You know, shrubbery or evergreens of some sort?
So I think they talked about it's a 20 or 25?
20-foot no cut zone.
20-foot no cut zone where that bubble is.
So what type of privacy would is there any type of privacy that I will get once you clear all that out of there? I'll have my 20 feet of trees that in the fall, when the leaves fall off of them, you have nothing. What am I going to get? Is there anything going to be done to give me any type of privacy? Like on the rail trail, the horse farm, they put up a whole row of evergreen trees to block it, to give us privacy. We don't know, especially if each homeowner develops that, which, are they going to put up fences? Are they going to, am I going to get any privacy? What's going to be required? Or is there nothing?
I think we're short one mic
Okay.
tonight.
Thank you for the question. So I think it's two things important to keep in mind. One, we're going to leave that 20-foot buffer, but I don't know that all the way around exactly what it's comprised of. The other piece is, as much as you don't want to see into somebody else's backyard, these would probably all be $1 million plus houses, just because it's so darn expensive to build anything these days. They probably don't want to see into your backyard just as much. So we're going to do everything we can to create privacy that's going to be to both your benefits. And I don't know if that means it's probably a combination of deciduous and evergreen trees. I hate those arborvitaes, like you plant them and the first snowstorm you get, they're getting cracked, falling down. So I don't want to just put those up and see those come down in a year or two. I'd rather, layer in maybe some evergreens and then some deciduous trees. But we can ask, at the Moore and Cameron Group, they have a landscape architect who laid out the street trees, and we can ask them to take a look and see where there's going to be some gaps. They noticed some along, but I want to find out where there's going to be more, because just as important for you, it's just as important for us to create private backyards for people. So that's a goal of ours as well.
But for me, it's just, in other words, I hate being at the mercy of what they're going to do. In other words, in your plan, if the board says no because you're not going to do anything about it, at least I know it's going to be done if they approve something, that I don't have to worry about this homeowner building something and he decides he ain't got the money for a fence now because he just bought his $1 million home or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
I will say this, they've done a no-cut zone, they've done a 20-foot buffer. Most developers go pin to pin and take everything down.
It's not a requirement for them to put any type of privacy.
It is not a
or-
requirement.
So
Yeah.
it's hard for the board. We can put, conditions in, but it's hard to require certain things to say, well, the neighbors need privacy or the homeowner needs privacy. Same with my house, right? I don't have any privacy unless I choose to make that privacy on my own. It's not necessarily anyone who is my neighbor. If they want privacy, they need to have it themselves. But I understand what you're saying, and you try to see what could be happening. And if they're willing to work with that, that's fantastic. The 20-foot buffer is great because they don't, like Brad said, they don't have to have any at all if they didn't want to.
Yeah, but I understand that, but they are also asking you, just like the Linda from before said, they're trying to put in 8 residences here. That's, if you've ever gone over there and stood in the middle, you're basically, there's no privacy for anybody. So they're asking you to put in the maximum amount of homes possibly there. you could at least consider telling them, no, you're only going to put 4 homes in there unless you can do something to keep the privacy. This is a 55-year-older community that's been there for 22 years that have developed a lifestyle of privacy that shouldn't really be going through this because it's not zoned for that many houses. It just happened to get through zoning, and now it's been put in your hands. So you do have the power to make
And the
demands.
The applicant just said that they would address it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why and I'm glad. I heard shrubberies of some sort there, but I just know that once you put houses in there with little kids, they're going to be right up to the end.
And as you well know, and as what you're saying, when I lived in Groveland, Whitestone Village wasn't even there. That was all woods. Imagine the surprise to all the neighbors, when that went in.
Yeah.
I mean, every development has a little,
Every
Yeah,
new
and I agree, and I'm not against developing, but I am against, at the expense, how many people, what expense when they put that in for, there was nobody on the Husside farm, really, it was all out back, so how many people really got affected? You have a whole community of 100 residences now being affected by this, by a community, a 55-older community that you allowed to get in there, which is nice and peaceful, that now will be disrupted unless we can minimize it as best we can. The best way would be to have less homes put back there, or at least work with Whitestone to keep some privacy there.
And the applicant said,
from all the developments I've seen coming in, a 20-foot,
well, and again,
20-foot
I mean,
footage strip is.
I'll say again, though, that the applicant's already said tonight that he will try to ensure as much privacy as he can.
And I appreciate
Right.
that.
And it's also,
Yeah.
it's also important to note that our discretion's not unlimited. We can't just say, nope, you can only have 3 houses. That's not what the planning board can and can't do. We have to look at our bylaws. We have to look at what discretion we are authorized to do. We can't just, go rogue and say, no, we don't like this, this is gonna disturb some people. This is private land that, in the aggregate, if it was your place, you'd wanna put as many houses on it as you could too. And
Obviously.
what they're saying is, we're going through this exhaustive process of, hey, does it meet these bylaws? Okay, how do we fix this? The owners are in trying to mitigate some of the concerns that you guys rightly raise, and then we rightly raise, and the select board rightly raises. So it's a collaborative effort. And, you got to understand, it's not something where we can just, we don't have ultimate discretion to say, nope, it's going to be 4 units. We can't do that. And we wouldn't be able to do it if you were developing the property either. So it's important to understand that we've got to be fair to everybody, regardless of whose backyard it's going to be, whether it's mine, yours, or someone else's. So we are all working in good faith and trying as hard as we can to, put these things in context and say, okay, well, it's fair for a builder to build, and it's fair for neighbors to be concerned, and we've got to make sure that the stormwater is going to be better, is what I'm hearing, than it currently is. So that should be an improvement. It's 8 units, not 80. So the traffic issues, if you looked at some of the materials, and some of them just came up yesterday, so it's this is new stuff, but they're saying the traffic impact is de minimis. It's nothing. It's nothing relative to what's going on in the area. It's 8 new houses, or 6 new buildings.
Well, what's going on in the state, it could have been apartments.
Right.
Thank you, Patrick. Sorry,
So-
I'd also like to just say that, to Patrick's point, is we do have a set of bylaws. We cannot just say, this is what we want and this is how it has to be done, because if they submit a plan and they meet all of our bylaws, if we turn it down, the submitter could go to the attorney, file a lawsuit, unjustful, and we would have to defend that, go back and forth. So we have to make sure we follow our bylaws. We can't just say because we don't like it. I just wanted to let you know that part of it. So the bylaws state what can be there, what can't be there. And with the land sizing, I think the town did a great job with having, that circle and the updated to be able to know what we want and what we didn't want. Because a lot of the, like you said, the rat tails, Linda had mentioned the rat tail, things like that. We tried to alleviate those just in order to get the square footages that we had before that, and we've worked with that. So, I'm glad that the developer has worked greatly with adjusting things and trying to bring things in. So hopefully, when they go out, review the buffer zone, and there's some more mitigation there for privacy. I hope that takes place. But just to, in respects to, they should have a smaller property and bigger lots with less houses. We can't technically control that. We can't tell them, no, we're only allowing 4, because if we say no and they meet the bylaws, then there's a lawsuit that can happen, and that's what we.
I agree.
So,
I agree. You got your rules you got to fly by, or I think I've seen it before in other towns. Where they would take you to court if you don't give them what they want.
correct.
But I think there is some leeway and to help protect
And those are the.
what the abutters have.
Correct.
Whether it be drainage, privacy, you know what I mean? It seems like they've taken care of the drainage problem from where I'm at. If you've been out there, you've seen it before, it's a little wet over there. I'm hoping, when you took the infiltration P1 away, I didn't understand, it seemed like a place that water was supposed to go, that's not gonna go now, but it's up in the front, it's not over by me, the rain garden's there. I hope the HOA thing goes through, because if that becomes a temporary thing, then all of a sudden, it gets filled in, and then now maybe we do have a water problem over there, and hopefully they put the right stuff in place to make sure it's maintained, so that, we're not, upset with the town because we're getting flooded out, because I am 608, I know it says 300 on the plans, but if I read it right, unless they corrected it. But thank you for your time. I've taken enough of your time, and you've answered me.
And thank you for yours, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
So,
That's right.
I'm sorry to interrupt everybody, but this
Linda,
is Linda.
Linda, I'm sorry, there was actually someone else here who was already in line for a question, if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry.
And then we'll certainly come back to you.
That's fine. Yep.
Please, sir.
My name is Joe Shuhovich, living at 1103 Alyssa Drive. And first off, I want to say thanks. Tonight was really very enlightening for me. I could see that you guys have done a lot of work. You guys have done a lot of work here, too, and I really appreciate that. So I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm just speaking for myself, that I feel somewhat better right now. But I think you can tell from Linda and others that we're counting on you guys. We're counting on you guys, and it's in your hands. I understand the decisions you have to make, that you have to follow the rules, but it's a buildable lot, allowed to have this, and you're doing your best to make it work because he's allowed to build. But the one question that I have is more towards Tech, and that is, so if this lot was just going to be all pervious surfaces, go back 20 years ago, it wouldn't fly. I'm going to assume that to be the case. That might be correct or not, but and that's irrelevant. It's that what we're really counting on for this to be successful from stormwater management perspective seems to me is that how successful the pervious surfaces are going to be, and it's not about. It is about today, but I already know we install them ourselves. They are effective. I mean, the water just percolates pretty much right through. I'm not sure at what point where a flooding situation would cause to have a certain amount of runoff, and that's why the rain gardens and retention ponds are in place to capture any of that overflow that the permeability of this hard surfaces are going to be able to handle. But we are, especially you guys, stewards of the land. This isn't just about today. This is about when everybody in Whitestone Village is long gone, and there's other people in there 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. That is really the big question, I think, for you guys to answer. And the permeable pavers and surfaces we have, we do have somewhat of some longevity with the track record, but not long enough. And that's really my concern. I'm not going to look for that answer because I don't think we really have enough of those answers to say 20, 40 years, 50 years from now, it's going to work just like it did when it was first installed. Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, all right. Thank you.
As far as the infiltration design goes, it's all based on the soil conditions. So based on the soil conditions we saw from their test pits, as long as the maintenance is properly done and as it's laid out inside their operations and maintenance plan, you should see a longevity of that system working. And when you do see systems not working as a result of buildup over time, maybe the area becomes a little more clogged than we expected it to be, that is when you can make modifications to these designs as time goes on. That's why you leave areas of buffers around these basins as well. But as it's currently designed, it should work if better, if not equal to what the existing conditions is.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had some more questions online.
Okay. There's someone else that wanted to have a question online?
I think Linda had another question.
Was there anyone, I'm not on the Zoom.
I
You on the
see you.
Zoom to see questions? No.
I see some.
I don't know if there was anyone else besides Linda, but
Is
I
that
can't even see
Linda's
who's on, how many
iPhone?
people are on there.
Me
Let's
neither.
say 14?
14.
14, okay.
Right.
Linda,
do you
go
have
ahead.
Questions?
What do you see,
Oh,
14?
okay, thank you. And I also want to thank you and totally agree that we want to be fair. It's been an awful lot of work that has gone into this. I just want to come back to one point because it's really critical. I understand the board's position, and you're completely correct, that there are a number of requirements which, if the applicant complies with them, they're going to happen. And I'm not really talking about those. I'm talking about the street. I think it's important that everyone remember that the layout of this parcel, the layout of the lots, is entirely dependent on the angle of the street. You wouldn't be able to get all of these buildings in if that street weren't so severely angled. In order for that to happen, the board must exercise its discretion to allow that street, one, to be at something much more acute than a right angle, and two, less than 400 feet. So the board, this is a discretionary decision with the board. It is not mandatory, at least if you're talking about the number and current configuration of the lots. And I'm just putting that out so that, I do believe very strongly that's true, clearly looking at the regulations. But I just want to make sure that we understand not only is there discretion here, but it's all dependent upon the board's discretion to allow this.
We'll take that.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. We will take under the advisement. So that exemption that they're requiring, what will happen is, once public comment is closed and we continue to move forward with this, we will go to that bylaw with the exemption, and we go through those exemption lists, and we have to make sure that they meet all the criterias to be passed as an exemption, right there. So it's not just, you're right, it is on us, but we also have to deem it, again, that is something else that can go to the court. We have to make sure that it follows suit with that exemption process. So, but thank you, I appreciate that, and we'll definitely take it under advisement.
Okay, thanks again.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Close public meeting.
Yep. Entertain a motion.
Is anyone else?
Any other comments from anyone here?
Just want to make sure you're not closing, because I think we had additional information that you've requested us to submit. So I want to
Yeah.
make sure that we have an opportunity to do that.
Awesome.
So, but continue, yes, and I think we need to talk about the schedule and an extension of time as well
Right.
tonight.
Yes.
So, looking at calendars for continuation here, the first Tuesday regular meeting would be the 3rd.
And so as far as extensions, right, so we're coming up,
Really, Rebecca, what-
12/14, Rebecca, is that the date?
Yes, we have an extension that they will sign that
Oh, they
will
do, we
extend
do.
the time period from when they filed.
Yep.
Drafted that, so we should be all set.
Okay. That doesn't need to be a form of motion or anything like that, it's just they're willing
Nope, you
to-
just need to formally extend
Yep.
the
Okay.
meeting to a set date and time, and we'll have the applicant sign the extension form that
Okay.
solidifies that from the date of the filing to then.
Okay.
All right. So looking at the first Tuesday, that would be the second, third, rather, I'm sorry, third.
December 3rd?
Third, the
Okay.
17th, the 7th, and the 21st is our next meeting dates.
3rd, 17th.
And then January, which would be 7th and 21.
I'd like to, we got the short week. I'd like to push for maybe the 3rd, if we can, Eric, yeah? Unless we have quorum issues.
The third, I'm okay.
I'm good for
So that's.
December 3.
Oh, gosh.
Mike?
Sorry. I'm a maybe on the third.
Okay. You said you were maybe on the 3rd?
Well, maybe on every date from here on in.
Shall we try the 3rd, and then if we do have issues, we've got the 17th there, 2 weeks later?
How many we need for quorum? We need 4 or 3?
What's that?
We need 3 for quorum?
We need
For,
3.
for a vote, we need 4,
We
right?
need,
You would definitely need a quorum to extend.
yeah. I would say we need at least, we need 4.
4, I believe.
So, the 3 of us.
3 is a quorum, but
Are they gonna
Jason, are you good on the
plan on
3rd?
voting on the 3rd?
But if you vote to a set time and date, you're voting to December 3rd, you would need to open and continue to a set date and time.
Right, right.
I mean, I would be more comfortable setting to the 17th, just to make sure we have enough people, if that's okay with the applicant.
I mean,
It's up, yeah, it's up to you guys, really. So if 17th sounds like a better date,
works for me.
I can do the 17th also.
You'll be here.
If it's cold, maybe.
No, you'll be here.
Okay, Father.
All right, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing on, regarding 181R School Street until December 17th at 7 PM.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
What's that?
Brad. Thank you, sorry.
okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, everybody.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody's time.
All right, moving on.
Bill, always good to see you.
There are like 4 curvy streets.
We'll give that in a minute to
you.
clear out.
Good to see you. Rotten. I can't say it, I'm on TV.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Next up.
So next. Looks like next on the docket is meeting minutes. Yeah.
Excuse me, folks. Just, we have to close out our meeting, so it's still live and stuff. Thank you. Oh, you're good.
you.
Thank you.
That's funny. I was thinking,
All right.
why isn't everything?
Next, sir.
Okay, next up. Meeting minutes.
Love
Approval.
Love 'em.
Absolutely love them.
Best minutes I've ever seen.
Motion
Approval of
motion
October
to approve the
29,
meeting minutes.
2024 meeting minutes.
Motion
What
to-
says the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
He seconded first.
Cool.
Please put Brad.
Yeah, that's fine.
He's back.
They were lovely.
You can
minutes.
put down that it was
I
unanimous.
think it was your, I think it was your finest work.
Are you all caught up? You are? You sure?
She says frantically typing.
Meeting minutes for today.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you.
Well,
Next up, town planner update.
So I do not have much. I just wanted to update the board and let you all know that we have our housing public workshop this Thursday, the 21st, from 6:30 PM to 8:30 PM here at Town Hall. We will be discussing the MBTA zoning, 3A zoning, and looking at a closer look at what we could potentially propose for districts. We will have Emily Innes with Innes Associates. We are very familiar with Emily. She worked with our comprehensive master plan and a 150 center feasibility study. So she is not new, but she's very familiar with the town and has been working with us on a lot of different housing initiatives. So it should be a very interesting workshop, and we're really hoping to get as many people to participate as we can, because we all know that this is something that will be coming before town meeting this year. So it is a requirement that we put forward these zoning changes and get them approved in order to fall into compliance with the state. So again, that's on November 21st, this Thursday, from 6:30 to 8:30 here at Town Hall.
So it's my understanding Milton hasn't heard from the courts yet?
I'm sorry?
No definitive action on Milton, the
No,
adjacent stuff?
They
no.
did go before the SJC, and they took the matter under advisement, and I don't think there's a ruling.
There's been no ruling that
The
we've
whole
been made
state's
aware.
waiting for that one, I think.
Yeah, sure.
They're gonna delay.
Yeah.
Delay.
And then the other update is just to let you know that we were successful in receiving our mass development grant for 150 Center Street for a request for expression of interest. So we shall be receiving more information, and we will be working with Emily Innes again, and she helped with the feasibility study, so you will be updated on that as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Next meeting, well, I got one thing. We, as a board, should probably start looking at that master plan that, was it Emily that brought it in, and we approved it?
Yeah, it was
We
approved, it was
adopted it,
approved
but we
last,
haven't
it was
really-
adopted last year.
Okay, we haven't dissected it yet.
I think it's a great idea, if the board would allow, so you can put it on as a reoccurring agenda item, and we can take a look at the task items. The planning board was mentioned as the, one of the facilitators for some of those strategies that were proposed. So I think having a constant look at it would be a really great idea.
Yeah,
Thank you.
100%.
Awesome, like it. Okay, I'll talk to Annie about getting it on the agenda.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, let's close this out.
Are there any other items not reasonably anticipated at time of posting?
Absolutely not.
None that I see. Good, you guys good?
Good?
Rebecca, and you're good, because you would have gave it to us. All right. Next meeting is going to be December 3rd? Is that what we said?
No, December 17th.
17th.
The 17th. We're not going to meet 3rd. We're just going to go right to the 17th.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next meeting, December 17th at 7 PM here at Town Hall, hopefully. And I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motioned.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 8, can't see the clock from here, 8:38. Good night, and thank you.